This is the worst speaking spot I've ever had in my life. Can't believe I have to talk after that. I agree with James that I'm ready to just drink. I don't see any need. Great. So I don't know if you know Josh Browder. I don't recommend following him on Twitter. It's not a useful thing to do. I don't think he'll watch this talk. But I think this is really great and representative. Because Josh, in my estimation, I don't like to yuck anyone's yum, guys, but like Silicon Valley tech bros, I sort of hold out maybe a little bit. And he really wants to be an influencer. He really would like to be that thought leader, the contrarian investor. He does invest, which is great. Highly recommend if you have lots of money to invest in people who are trying to start their own companies. But there's something that feels a little like middle school to what he said here and what I've certainly witnessed on Twitter, in the venture community, in the tech community over the past few years, which is that if where you live sucks, it's usually about taxes. Why would we subsidize, I don't know, community goods and be citizens? Like, it's our money, right? And so we get upset, or not we, but the Twitterati, and decide that we have to move. And of course, there are only 3 places to move, right? You can move to the peninsula, right? Miami now is acceptable because Keith Raboy is there. Austin, very cool. And there, maybe LA, maybe Denver, maybe New York. And this is where you go, right? And it's been amazing to me over my life to meet lots of people who are contrarian investors, who really do the research, really understand things, who have no such application to geography at all. How do I go to the next slide in Google Slides? This is fun. Okay, so I asked this question, and my co-founder asked this question, which was, what if you took an intentional view into where you lived? What if you asked, if I'm going to move, and my co-founder and I lived in different places, so one of us was going to have to move, and instead of him saying, well, I'm the CEO, so you have to move to me, he kindly said, let's do a process. Let's be intentional about this. And let's go look. What if we moved somewhere so that we could be personally and professionally more successful? What if we pulled data? What if we visited places? And what if we thought about it? And so I go on Twitter somewhat regularly, and I ask people about this. And I think the answer that I resoundingly get back is, no, fuck you, that's stupid. So Alex Cohen, who is a great follow, I recommend following both Chris Munz and Alex Cohen. When I asked Alex Cohen about this, he wrote this. I hate California and San Francisco and everything about it, but I won't move to Ohio. And Chris Munz, again, love Chris, talked about the devastating part of being young in this economy, not owning a house, and saying we have a real housing crisis. We have a wage problem where our wages can't pay for houses. And when I asked him, why don't you move somewhere, like the Midwest, say, where you could have higher wages relative to housing, he wrote back, literally, we can't just move somewhere where housing would be more affordable and wages would be higher to solve our problem of wages and housing. Like, there is something very broken in our brains when you make this kind of statement. It's absolutely, I can't solve why do you say I can solve the pain in my foot from the splinter by removing the splinter? Makes no sense. It just gets dismissed out of hand. That there are cool places to live and there are not cool places to live, and you're gonna move to the cool places because it's middle school. And moving's hard, right? And I'm gonna talk about this more. Moving is hard. So this is a talk entitled, Why We Chose Columbus. By the way, this is a shirt from the Columbus Bluebirds, a Negro League team that existed for 6 months in 1931, but But Homage, the wonderful t-shirt and garment company, I recommend you buy lots of things from Homage, based in Columbus. And the original official Homage crew hoodie, Columbus crew fighting for their life in the to get to the MLS playoffs right now. Who am I? All right, so my name is Joe Emison. I'm the co-founder and CTO of Branch. I also went to Williams College, so strong recommendation for there. Although after Stephen, we sell. So at Branch.com, we sell home, auto, renters, and umbrella insurance. And although this is not the thing that I would start with first, but it is often used as a point of validation, we were recently valued at over $1 billion. We've raised over $250 million. We are a successful venture-backed startup based in Columbus. We have about 450 employees now. We're hiring. We sponsored the job board. If you're looking for a job, talk to us. And we're also native remote, so you don't actually have to move to Columbus to work for Branch, although about a third of our employees live in Ohio, about half live in the Midwest. You don't have to move to Columbus if you work for Branch, but you will definitely be happier and wealthier if you do. So I'm going to give this talk in several sections. This is not what we did. I'm going to talk about that later. This is if I were to do it again, what would I do? Because it's always better. You know, when you tile a bathroom the first time, you see every flaw because you're terrible at it. But you tile a bathroom the second time, and you're like, I'm good at this, right? This is like, if I were going to do this again, this is what I would do. And so this is the short version. The good news is, at the end of this talk, I will give you links to download Excel spreadsheets with lots of data that we spent lots of time and money. Now, I will also say that it may not exist for very long because I'll just say licensing. So just get ready at the end of this talk to type something in and while it exists. Okay. So these are the criteria, if I were doing this again today, that I would look at. And we're going to go through and give the analysis. And here's the funny thing. I did this again for this talk, and I did not know. I mean, I did not cook the books, I promise you. I laid out criteria, I pulled the data, and the answer will not surprise you. So number one, and so these are the criteria. We're going to go through them slide by slide. So how do we get a large metro that is growing? Now, look, I love Portland. I've lived most of my life in Asheville, North Carolina, so it's obviously not one of the top 50 metros. In starting this company, for us, as a national insurance company, we needed to have an airport that went a decent number of places and not the hell that Steven goes through every time he gets on a plane, which is what I faced in. We could have gone to Chicago, but we didn't. It didn't meet the criteria. We needed a certain amount of size, and I was ready to live in a city. I mean, I've lived in a couple cities. I lived in Boston for a while. And I was ready for that personally, and I was ready for that as a company. Even though we are native remote, it is very useful for us, at least, to have a home base. And again, you're going to keep hearing me. I'm telling you a personal journey, and this does feel like personal journey Monktoberfest, doesn't it? It's like not Metaphor Fest this year. This is the personal journey that I hope some of the data I have may be useful for you, or just some of the journey. So obviously, I would not expect everyone doing this analysis to come out to the same result, although I think a lot of you would consider Columbus in a way that you wouldn't before. That's my hope. So I also care about growing. So as a startup founder, right, this is my 6th company, I see so much value in things that grow versus things that are not growing or shrinking. And if I were to give one piece of professional advice to anyone, it would be go places where things are growing. There are more resources. There is more available. You can grow into things. As soon as you go to things that are not growing or shrinking, it is a zero-sum or negative-sum game, and you're fighting for, when you get more, someone else gets less. It's a much less cohesive, good environment. If you go to growth, everyone can win. And so I think that's the simplest way I can explain why I care about growing metros. There are a bunch of other reasons to care that are all kind of aligned with those. But of the top 50 metros by size, these are the ones that are growing. Now, growing at least 5% between 2015 and 2020. So you could decide. That's an arbitrary threshold, right? You could say 1%, 2%. Again, you'll have the data. You can make your own cut. I wanted to draw a line somewhere. I thought 5% was enough. Again, that's 2015 to 2020. You could look more recently. The data wasn't really good. That was more recent. Okay, so what's next? This one, I think, is the most important criteria if you are starting a company and you are hiring people today. I think that our housing crisis in the US today is the single worst thing that we have, and the single thing that makes certainly the employees that we have the most anxious and impacts their happiness the most. And so, again, there's an arbitrary threshold here. So I pulled median, and one of the things is the data on median housing price is terrible if you use census data or HUD data. It's wrong. Like, it will tell you that like the median house price in the New York metro is like $200,000. Like, it's just a lie. Zillow, on the other hand, is actually quite good, especially within their data. And so I use the 2022 Q2 Zillow data. So this is like after all the run-ups. This is after Austin's real estate all doubled or beyond that over the pandemic. And so I took that median housing price, I divided by the median income. Now that median income data is pretty good, I think, from the census. And again, I've pulled lots of this data. I mean, we spent probably 18 months pulling different data, looking at it, thinking if it was good. And so in this, what you can see is all of the metros here have a median housing price divided by median income of 7 or less. So 7 years of median income can buy the median housing price. That roughly correlates with like being able to get a mortgage on that income, although we could debate that. Again, you could draw your own lines. The green ones are the ones that were growing. So immediately we have a massive cut down. So if you agreed, growing metro, affordable housing, we've cut 50 down to a very small number right now. I also want to point out, and this is one of these things that when people rate metros, and every one of these like top 5 cities for X, they're all terrible. They're written by people who did no thought, no research, came up with scores, did terrible things. You should pick thresholds, and everything above the threshold qualifies. This is like approval voting version for metro selection. You don't want some weird outlier to go drive the rest of the results because you created some scoring metric. There is something really important to note, though. Different metros are wildly different in size. And so some of the things that make like Nashville affordable, Nashville I don't think is affordable at all. But the problem is the metro's huge. So it goes out like 2 hours, right, commute time. So you're just so far away from it. So it still qualifies here. But that's okay. We introduced commute time as a qualifier to help deal with that. Okay, schools. I strongly believe that what we want to provide is if you join Branch and we pay 75th percentile of the Midwest for salary. When you join, you should be able to, if you live in Columbus, you should be able to buy, on the salary you're provided at any level at Branch, you should be able to buy a home that you can have 3 children in. It can be a 20-minute or less drive from the office if you want to come in during rush hour, and there should be good public schools that you can send your kids to. And so that's the goal here. And so this data is difficult on the public schools data. U.S. News and World Report seems to have the best data on this. So in this case, we have in green the metros that have good public schools, and we're on the prior 2 lists. So again, we have cut this down to Atlanta, Columbus, Dallas, and Houston. And then finally, if we look at commute times, and we want to have a commute time of 25 minutes or less. Again, completely arbitrary. You can look at what these values are. Even if you bring this up to 30, I don't know if you get anybody else in. The only metro that hits all of these criteria is Columbus, right? So you can go play with this data, look at it, but to me, these are the things that matter. And these are the things that were really important when we did our analysis. Okay, so you're going to get this. But okay, that's not what we did. We did like something that was way harder and way more work, and we pulled way more data. And so let me tell you about that. So my co-founder and I lived in different cities. I lived in Asheville, North Carolina. He lived in North Royalton, Ohio, which is outside of Cleveland. And so we both married with 3 children each. Mine are slightly older. I have 2 12-year-old twins, boy, girl, and an 8-year-old girl. And his kids are like slightly younger, no twins. And I tried to get him to move to Asheville because I didn't want to move because moving sucks. I just want to be very clear. Like the entire process sucked. At the time when we were talking about it, my wife said, among other things, I do not want to be a fucking Ohioan, and I'm not fucking moving to Ohio. Now, had my wife ever been to Ohio? No. But she definitely knew it wasn't cool and did not want to move there. I mean, she was like, we're coastal elitists. Like, we can't do that. Which I very much empathized with. I'm not like, everything she said, I was like, yes, I know. I feel that like natively, emotionally as well. But we decided, and my co-founder is the like highly rational, data-driven one. Although I'm the CTO and president, he's the CEO. But he is very much like, let's add up all these numbers and have formulas. And so his view was, let us go to the place that maximizes our ability to be a successful personal lines insurance company. Now, I don't know if you shopped for home and auto insurance. No, you've all shopped for home and or auto insurance, I'm sure. And I'm positive that you bought the cheapest option that you thought was going to be around like tomorrow. Like it is a price-sensitive market, period. I mean, now there's some people who are like, I have a great claims experience, so I'm going to stay with this carrier. But at the very beginning, you get a bunch of options, you're shopping around, you're picking the cheapest one. And so being able to be located in a cheaper metro means we can be more price competitive. And in fact, my co-founder built the Esurance homeowners product from scratch in San Francisco and had to compete against Progressive in Mayfield Heights, Ohio. And that's just unnecessarily more expensive insurance if you're trying to run it out of San Francisco. So we pulled data. We pulled a lot of data. This is like, there are 100 columns, I think, in this spreadsheet. By the way, we haven't mentioned weather. I just want to take a brief note and say, almost everywhere, except for Southern California, has some shitty months of the year, okay? I mean, just because you moved to Texas doesn't mean that it's fun 12 months a year. When we looked at moving to Columbus, what I noticed is the median temperature was the exact same as Asheville, North Carolina for 9 months out of the year. And in fact, it is. It is unfortunately more humid, and the 3 months of the year that it is not is, miserable. I hate February. It's not fun. But that's a very easy, rational, intentional trade-off to make for all of the other benefits that we're getting. So you're going to be able to see this. I just want to demonstrate. We pulled this. This is 208 metros. Unfortunately, at some point along the way, we lost the very final version of this that did a bunch of scoring. But like the data's there, so you can play with the data. We pulled the data of 208 markets, so that's 150,000 population and above. We built an algorithm based upon all the criteria. So you're going to see like gun ownership. We were airing for less, by the way. Gay couples as a percentage of household, erring on more, et cetera. Like there was this explicit decisions we were trying to make where we were trying to hit a representative population of the US and weighting these things in very arbitrary ways, by the way, in the ways of that people rank metros that I don't like, right? Where you create some score and you say, okay, well, this one's going to get this many points for this. This is why I gave you this other view of acceptable metros by certain criteria, I think is a better way to go. Once we got to 21, we sent out this survey, and we sent it out to people we wanted to hire, and we asked them about the 21 metros we had selected. So this is the 21. You'll be able to get this and see this if you want to look at this, that met the criteria and the threshold. And we asked everybody, would you move to this? This is pre-COVID, pre-us saying we're remote native. So we asked people, would you move to this metro if the right job opportunity was available. And we said yes, sort of approve, or like, no, I would never move to this metro. And then we had, I don't know anything about this metro. Now, one metro had 100% of the people we asked said, I would move there for a job. Does anyone want to guess? What is the coolest metro on this list according to the world? It's not Austin. We had like 2 disapproves on Austin. Anything? Where? No. I think Dallas is probably like a 50-50. Nashville. People want to live in Nashville because they go there for bachelor parties or bachelorette parties, and it's a great place for that. I think I'm dubious about whether it would be good to raise a family in Nashville. I think it'd be pretty fun to be single and living in the Gulch, though. But essentially everything we got back on Columbus was like, I don't know, like why would I go there? And it is true. I will say, moving from Asheville, which is a tourist town, to Columbus, it's nice. There are really not that many tourists, except for football games, but they constrain themselves to Ohio Stadium. So as a result of this, we narrowed to 4 markets, okay? And so we decided we were only going to do 1 per state based on the survey results. And so it was Austin, Columbus, Nashville, and Raleigh-Durham, Chapel Hill. And so I then got an Esri license, and I plotted commute times and neighborhoods, because what I was concerned about was we're going to find metros that have good schools, but the good schools are with the expensive houses are like way far away. So I probably spent like 200 hours looking at what are the metros, what are the walk scores, what are the schools like, how far are they from downtown, how much do the houses cost. And then we went and visited those 4, and we went and visited all those neighborhoods, and we did like a rush hour drive. I got to tell you, the only place we did not complete the rush hour drive was the Esri told us that the rush hour drive in Nashville from downtown to this place in Franklin County was like 25 minutes. 2 hours and 30 minutes later, we had not made it to the neighborhood, and we had to turn around and go to the airport. Nashville's traffic is a real problem. By the way, learned that Nashville's traffic is a real problem because they don't have a state income tax, and they have no way to pay for infrastructure. And so they try to pay for infrastructure by raising the sales tax, which is already 11%, and the Koch brothers spent hundreds of millions of dollars to defeat that. So if you don't have a way, Austin has much the same problem. If you have no way to tax your citizens, and your citizens don't like paying taxes, if you have a growing metro, you will have a massive traffic problem and commuting problem. And this also affects your public schools massively. So having a state in which people actually pay taxes and are willing to pay taxes, and there is a political willingness to raise taxes and have taxes, is necessary if you are in a growing metro. I mean, just period. It's just logic. Unfortunately, politics today is not very tied to logic. And so it is nice that Ohio, even though you might not think so, because of the way it's divided up into many small locales, people do actually fund schools and pay taxes, again, largely because it's so much of the taxation actually happens at a local level. That seems to be the saving grace within Ohio, and that there's general agreement for taxing. Okay, so we visited every city. We visited the Chamber of Commerce. We visited the people giving tax incentives, which my co-founder was really interested in. I was like, we're a startup, like we're not getting any tax incentives. Although we have gotten wonderful tax incentives now, so I do appreciate that. Ohio, wonderful tax incentives, I will say. And sorry, I'm trying to find my mouse so I can move this over. We chose Columbus. And so in 2019, we decided on Columbus in 2018. And honestly, I visited with my family, he visited with his family, and we got there and my wife was like, fuck, I like it. She was like, this place is pretty great. You should visit. One of our investors is Dan Gilbert of Rocket, the Rocket company's Rocket Mortgage, and he doesn't try to sell people in Detroit until he brings them out. So his whole idea is to bring them out. Now, I will tell you, Detroit, of our 21 cities, was the one that basically everyone was like, I'm not moving there. So that is why that one didn't qualify. Okay, so what have we learned? So I really want to underline that moving was hard. I mean, people don't do this because it's hard. So I don't want to sugarcoat that, like, moving from a place that we had lots of friends and our kids had friends. I mean, this was difficult. If you asked me or my wife right now, would you go back to Asheville? I mean, the answer would be absolutely not. Like, Columbus is such a better place to raise our children. Our children are flourishing. They are so much more successful than they were in Asheville. The public schools, all of the public schools available to us in Columbus are light years better than the most expensive and best private school in Asheville. Like, it's not close. And so, we're not leaving because it's the best metro in the U.S. to raise a family. And I just don't think there's a comparison. And we have friends all over the U.S. So, but it was really hard and difficult. Another thing I want to underline is that hiring and retention has been very easy. It's been easy for a couple of reasons. So we went native remote in the pandemic. I mean, I understand, still the pandemic, but let's say we went native remote in 2020. We do hire a lot of people in Columbus and in Ohio, but we have people all over the U.S. Most of the company does not live in Ohio. And being present in a city in which you don't have people constantly looking for new jobs and trying to go on blind and figure out how they can make slightly more in total compensation by switching companies does mean you can invest a lot more in your employees, and does mean you can be a lot more intentional about culture because people will stick around. So if you can read my pinned tweet. I'll have my Twitter handle up here shortly. But we have largely only hired junior developers. Those positions actually for senior software developers are the first ones we've ever listed. So everyone we've hired from the beginning we've been their first job for most of them. We hired out of boot camps. Then now we run our own boot camp. We pay for it. We try to find people who are out of work within Columbus, and if you take our boot camp and you're within Ohio, we pay you $200 a week to do the boot camp, as long as you're doing well enough. We offer you an internship, which is designed to teach you more, and then a full-time job within a year at competitive 75th percentile wages. So we have largely only hired junior developers, first job. We are now hiring a few experienced developers now that we have the culture set, and so we can weed out the typical tech bros who might show up. It's been very gratifying, and there's no way we could have done this in Austin. It would have been just too much fighting, and Austin really was our runner-up at the time. We just got named. We didn't apply for this. We got named the 13th best place to work in the U.S. for a company of our size. You can read our Glassdoor reviews. People are like, you're like paying people or bribing them, but we're not. It's great. And this is our tech team. So these are the branch software, mostly software developers. There are a few designers and product managers in here. As far as I know, I think we have like the most diverse tech team of any VC-backed startup valued at $1 billion or more. Again, we could not have done this. I think it would have been incredibly hard to do this outside of Columbus. But this is what it's like when you invest in junior developers and you build a farm team and build your own company. So I would love for you, first of all, I would love for you to feel a little attacked with your choice of where you have lived and your lack of intentionality in choosing it. But I stand from the position of already having moved. And maybe Meg will attack me even further for this. I don't know if this is worse than the fitted sheet. No, that never. Okay. But this will give you the Excel files. It has a password. The password is the same as the Wi-Fi password here. That was my cute way of not having the password in the video. So you can also just tag me if you need the password. That's my Twitter handle. I would love to talk to anybody about Columbus or looking for metros or hiring junior developers, and thank you very much.